Collaborative teaming may be defined as two or more people working together toward a common goal. Collaborative teaming facilitates the inclusion of students with disabilities in general education environments and can be viewed as the glue that holds inclusive schools together. So who makes up a school team, and what does this look like in a school environment? We briefly introduced and spoke about the roles of individuals who may provide services to a student with an IEP. Each of these individuals makes up a student's multidisciplinary team. Multidisciplinary teams are mandated by IDEA, and by this, the law means teams consisting of multiple professionals with different areas of disciplinary expertise. For example, if a child has speech and language needs, a school district can't simply say, "Oh, we have a special education teacher under contract and that is enough to meet the student's speech and language needs." Instead, there has to be as many professionals from as many different disciplines involved on the child's multidisciplinary team as the child needs. So, the child who receives IEP services underneath the category of speech and language impairment would need access to a speech-language therapist to provide those services. The legal requirement is that students must have access to multiple professionals with an array of disciplinary expertise. So that is what we mean by the legal requirement for multidisciplinary teams. The members of the multidisciplinary team who provide services and write the student's IEP include the parents who have valuable insights and information about their child's strengths and needs and ideas for enhancing his or her education, the general education teacher who can share information about classroom expectations and student performance, a special education teacher who has training and experience in educating children with disabilities and in working with other educators to differentiate curriculum and provide supports, a psychologist or other individual who can interpret the results of any evaluations and use these results to help plan an appropriate instructional program, a representative of the school system who knows about special education services and who has the authority to commit resources, such as the school principal, and other individuals with knowledge or special expertise about the student that are in parents or the school district. Also, representatives from the community or transition service agencies when those services are being discussed, and then also the child when appropriate. Members of a multidisciplinary team are professionals across various disciplines that work independently of one another, but often collaborate with one another and work together when supporting a student. These team members share information and they work towards common goals, but they also conduct some of their work separately. One important role of teaming is when professionals teach their skills to the other team members. For example, instead of providing 30 minutes of therapy on 2 days per week, a physical therapist would teach the special education teacher, the classroom aide, the child's parents, and others on the school team how to do a range of motion exercises with the child so that the student gets the exercises several times a day. Instead of the student only receiving services 60 minutes from the PT therapist, now the student receives the services he or she needs in addition to the scheduled PT times. This type of approach amongst team members, when truly implemented, requires a lot of time for meeting and planning together amongst the professionals. What are the different roles or the aspects of a job that a special education teacher has? Listed on this slide are some common teaching roles for special education teachers, and do be aware that a special education teacher might have more than one role. For example, a special education teacher may co-teach with a general education teacher in the morning and then may work as a resource teacher in the afternoon. Let me quickly describe the different roles. Itinerant teachers are special education teachers that travel from school to school. They most likely support students with low incidence disabilities. Remember, that means children with disabilities that are rare. For example, an elementary school may only have one child who is blind in the entire school, and the child is included in the general education classroom. An itinerant teacher might come to the school once a week, meet with the child's teacher about accommodations or special materials or teaching methods that the child needs, helps the teacher and others prepare lessons and materials, and then perhaps works individually with the student for a short. The point is that an itinerant teacher is shared among several schools and provides assistance and shares expertise with teachers and monitors the education of students who have less common disabilities. Special education classroom teachers are those that have their own special education classroom environment, entirely made up of students who have disabilities and receive services through an IEP. The IEP team for these children have determined that the most appropriate educational environment is in a special education classroom and not in a general education classroom for most of the school day. There are still many special education teachers who have their own classrooms to support individuals that have disabilities. Resource room teachers have students with disabilities come and go into their room for parts of the school day. For example, a child may leave the general education classroom environment and come to a resource room for a couple of hours each day to receive some special instruction, perhaps with a small group of 4 or 5 other students, or maybe individual tutoring. The point is, resource room teachers work with children who come and go from the resource room and the general education classroom. Inclusion or consultant teachers are special education teachers who primarily work with the general education teachers to include children with disabilities into the general education classroom environment. An inclusion teacher with a large caseload may consult with many teachers and may take responsibility for modifying materials and lesson plans, and may also make regular observations in a classroom to see how a child is progressing. However, an inclusion teacher in the strictest sense of how this term is used does not teach alongside the general education teacher, but rather provides consultative services to support students with disabilities. A cooperating teacher is one who co-teaches with a general education teacher. As a service delivery option, co-teaching is designed to meet the educational needs of students with diverse learning needs. Students at all academic levels benefit from alternative assignments and greater teacher attention in small group activities that co-teaching makes possible. Co-teaching allows for more intense and also more individualized instruction in the general education environment, which also increases access to the general education curriculum while decreasing stigma for students with disabilities. Students have an opportunity to increase their understanding and also their respect for students with disabilities. Students with disabilities have a greater opportunity for continuity of instruction as the teachers benefit from the professional support and exchange of teaching practices as actively. When thinking about co-teaching, there are 6 different types of co-teaching arrangements. 1 teach, 1 observe. One of the advantages in co-teaching is that more detailed observation of students engaged in the learning process can occur. With this approach, for example, co-teachers can decide in advance what types of specific observational information to gather during instruction and can agree on a system for gathering the data. Afterwards, teachers can analyze and talk about the information together. 1 teach, 1 support. In a second approach to co-teaching, one person would keep primary responsibility for teaching, while the other professional circulated through the room providing unobtrusive assistance to students as needed. During station teaching, teachers divide content and students. Each teacher then teaches the content to one group and subsequently repeats the instruction for the other group. If appropriate, a third station could give students an opportunity to work independently. Parallel teaching. On occasion, student learning would be greatly facilitated if they just had more supervision by the teacher or more opportunity to respond. So in parallel teaching, the teachers are both covering the same information, but they divide the class into two groups and then teach simultaneously. Alternative teaching. In most class groups, occasions arise in which several students need specialized attention. In alternative teaching, one teacher takes responsibility for the large group, while the other works with a smaller group. Team teaching. In team teaching, both teachers are delivering the same instruction at the same time. Some teachers refer to this as having one brain in two different bodies. Others call it tag team teaching. Most co-teachers consider this approach the most complex, but also the most satisfying way to co-teach, but the approach that is most dependent on the teacher's styles. Listed on this slide are several excellent recommendations for successful co-teaching. Co-teaching is becoming a more and more common role for the special educator, and it changes the life of the special educator as well as the general education classroom teaching. The co-teaching role is something that whether you're a general educator or a special educator, you need to become familiar with and embrace. Let's watch a short clip on co-teaching.
0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 4 is 4. 1 plus 6 is 7. 7 plus 1 is 8. 0 plus 8 is 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. 12 plus 2 is 14 plus 1 is 10. 1 times 9 is 9. Okay, 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 9 is 9. 0 plus 7 is 7. Plus 1 is 8. 3 plus 2 is... Oh, wait. 589. I don't... Add the remainder. Oh, add the remainder. Okay. Add the remainder plus 28. Now I want you to give a name to your partner's quadrilateral. Not your own. The main standard says that sound can change by changing the rate of vibration. And down here it says, what are the conditions that make pitch vary? Vary means to do what? Stay the same or different? Different. Vary means to be different. So how does changing the rate of vibration maybe affect pitch? Michael?
When vibration goes quickly, this high pitch, and when it goes slowly, that's a slow pitch.
Slow pitch or slow pitch. Very good. Excellent. All right. Now, we are going to, because it says that we have to investigate. So what does investigate mean? Find out. Investigate mean. I'm looking for a quiet hand. Jocelyn.
Find out?
To find out. You helped her out, didn't you, Michael? Excellent.
All right, Ms. Alexander, I'm going to jump in before you hand out the pipes.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we have some directions we need to go over even before we hand out the pipes. Because once we start investigating, it's really easy to get lost in the investigation. And we have to get the directions under control first. All right, so the directions, it says, so today, Ms. Alexander said we're going to be investigating. We're going to be looking to find out. We're exploring. We're going to see if we can draw our own conclusions about sound. And then our first direction is going to be observe the pipe on your desk. Ms. Alexander has... So you need to be reading, Emily, you need to be reading. Where are you turning?
3 plus 12 4.
So where is that? Where are we
12 plus 3. I mean 12 plus 4.
What are representative?
12 points.
You got 3 point, what's that?
12 and a 3.
This is 2.36, and I say it's 2.1. Well, look, the 6 makes this go 2.4, right?
Right into the nearest
Okay, what'd you tell me?
No. 0 to
45.
Let's write the equation. 48 cents divided by 6.
I didn't know.
United States. A Native American woman named Sacagawea agreed to help them on their journey. Together, they led a group of explorers
80 cents. You don't need
places that Lewis-Pratl explored.
cousins.
Which
want
one
to
is
split
most
your money.
important to what that
How can you
paragraph is
give
talking
them
about?
each the same amount?
A,
How
what
can
they
you give them
did
each the
while
same
they were
amount?
there.
Figure it out, and then show me.
8 cousins.
4 cousins.
All right,
4 cousins.
synonyms.
And you have 80 cents. So
Brianna,
you
come
want
on
to know
up. Match
how
up the synonyms.
much money each cousin would get.
Humorous. Humorous.
You don't need a dollar bill.
Humorous. Yeah, try to get
Okay.
Do you think she's going to be the speaker for home?
No.
Maybe. Maybe. Okay, so that's what we have to determine.
What do you think the speaker is of this? They're similar in somehow. How is
Let's start a double entry journal.
double entry journal?
I don't know how to do that. Oh, yes.
So we covered the types of special education teachers in terms of their roles, for example, special class teachers, resource teachers, and co-teachers. But there's another way to organize them, and that is by certification area. You should be aware that there are other states that have the same certification structure as Illinois, and other states that are a little bit different, and then there's other states that are yet a lot different. So teacher certification can vary quite a bit from state to state. This is not only specific to special education, but also in other areas of teacher certification. So let's cover how Illinois certifies its special education teachers. Illinois has 3 major special education certification areas. The first one, and the largest, is the Learning and Behavior Specialist 1 certificate. This certificate is considered a cross-categorical special education certificate because it enables one to teach children with primary disabilities in multiple disability categories. Specifically, this means children ages 3 to 21 with any primary disability other than deaf or blind, a teacher with an LBS 1 can teach. This is quite a range when you think about it. A 3-year-old with multiple severe disabilities, an 8th grader with a behavioral disorder, junior with a learning disability that wants to go to college are all quite different types of students with different types of learning needs. But if someone has an LBS 1 certificate in the state of Illinois, that certifies him or her to teach children with these types of disabilities. What the LBS 1 certified teacher cannot teach is children with a primary disability of low vision blindness, as that requires an LVB, that stands for low vision blindness, certificate, and also children diagnosed as deaf and hard of hearing or DHH. These certificates are also pre-K through 12 certificates, meaning that they apply to any child with these disabilities served by the public schools between the ages of 3 and 21. Here at ISU, we offer programs leading to all 3 of these different certificates. There are other special education certifications and endorsements in Illinois, and we'll only lightly discuss these. There is a multi-categorical early childhood special education certificate, and there's also an early childhood special education endorsement that can be attached to an early childhood teaching certificate. Furthermore, there are advanced special education teaching certificates called Learning and Behavior Specialist 2 certificates. It will be most important for you to remember that there are 3 major types of certifications, including LBS 1, DHH, and LVB. The current special education teaching certification structure is relatively new. It's been with us since about 2003 and 2004. These were the transition years. Prior to that, Illinois certified its special educators by disability category. For instance, one could earn a certificate in learning disability, physical handicap, intellectual disability, and behavior disorders. Most special education teachers in this prior area were certified in more than one disability area, but were certified in all of the disability areas. This method of special education teacher certification changed because of a lawsuit called the Corey H. lawsuit. This lawsuit just wasn't about special education teacher certification. It had ramifications for a lot of issues and practices associated with special education. But in terms of teacher education, or teacher certification, here's the story. A little boy named Corey was told by his school district, which was Chicago Public Schools, that he needed to attend a certain school because the school district had employed a teacher at the school who was certified in the disability area that corresponded with Corey H's primary disability. But Corey's parents wanted him to go to his neighborhood school. The court ruled that the way in which Illinois certifies resulted in a child being denied an education by violating the IDEA principle of students being educated in the least restrictive environment, or LRE. The court said the way that Illinois certified its teachers limited the options for students with special education needs, as children were being educated in a school where a teacher with a certain teaching certificate was at instead of being educated where they would receive the best education. And therefore, Illinois needed to come up with a new teacher certification structure. So, this is where the 3 special education teacher certification categories came from. We have one cross-categorical certificate, which is the LBS 1, and then 2 categorical certificates, the DHH, and then the certificates. As you know by now, special educators are not the only professionals, and special education is not the only professional discipline involved with children with disabilities in the public schools. I hope you now have a better idea of the individuals who make up a student's team, the different roles of special educators, and an even better idea of the certification structure currently in Illinois.